And Bedouin villagers in al-Ahmar after bulldozers moved into the area. Just before we came on air, I spoke to Seth Fransom, journalist for the Jerusalem Post.
Well, there's a very small Bedouin village that consists of, I think, mostly shacks and caravans that is located east of Jerusalem. So in the West Bank, basically, in the area that would be part of a future Palestinian state. And this small Bedouin kind of hamlet or village is located next to several Jewish communities that in international law are seen as settlements. So Israel has been in a dispute with these Bedouin for a while, basically arguing that these people are the equivalent of squatters living on state land. And they've been trying to move them off that land to another recognized or existing kind of suburb of Jerusalem for a while. And in the last few weeks, they brought bulldozers in the last few days or so. And then there was a bunch of round of international condemnations. So the Supreme Court of Israel has basically put a stay until July 11th to try to come to some other compromise, which I think basically, if you look back, has been the same system that's happened for years or so, in which the state has wanted these people to move. And it hasn't ever happened, usually because there's an international outcry or a lot of pressure to not move them.
How long has this dispute been going on, Seth?
Well, I think in general, the dispute has been going on probably, in a sense, for decades, because the state sees these people as basically living on state land or basically squatting illegally. But I think the kind of pressure to move them has grown just in the last few years. And then, of course, there was a lot of pushback by U.S. senators, obviously by the EU and the UN, and a whole series of bodies, and also by left-wing activists in Israel, and obviously by the Palestinian community.
Do we know, Seth, where they want these people to go to? They're trying to force them and move them from where they are. They've been there for quite a while, but is there somewhere for them to go?
Right, so there's a town called Abu Dis, which is basically a suburb of Jerusalem. And over the last few years, Israel cleared an area in that town and turned it into an area there could be new housing there. People say that that's actually next to a landfill. But I've been there, and I think it's more like I think most of that area of whatever the landfill, the garbage area, has been cleared as well. So the state says, well, these people are basically living informally. Why can't they just move to these some sort of apartment buildings over here? Obviously, the people don't want to move, but I think the state says, yeah, but we gave these people a solution. So why can't they just move over there as opposed to living in a bunch of shacks and caravans?
This is a bit of a hold in that has been put on this until Wednesday. So what will happen after that?
I guess it remains to be seen. My sense is that the huge amount of international outcry and pressure on Israel from both the EU, UN, and probably some in the US, I mean, it may not be worth it for Israel to move them because at the end of the day, it's just a very small number of people. And the usual thing that happens with Israel in the West Bank, especially in the West Bank, is that once the kind of international spotlight is on these very small places, this is the only place that's under this kind of spotlight in which Israel's trying to kind of move these people off state land or change something. So it generally ends up being the government doesn't want to pay the price of the controversy. But every once in a while, you'll see that then bulldozers will go in and they'll destroy the houses. And usually what happens is the people end up not moving anyway. The people basically go back the next few weeks and try to rebuild. So it ends up being this kind of cycle.